What's going on, guys? It's your boy Triple S here, and I just wanted to talk to you about a game that I am very much looking forward to, and that game is Framemakers. Now, before I get into specifics of what characters I want to see moving forward and what assists I want in the game and all kinds of stuff like that, let me just give you a brief rundown of what Framemakers is and why you should care about it. So, Framemakers is basically a game made by the same developers as Super Smash Flash 2. It is a platform fighter featuring many indie stars such as Octodad, Fishbungeon, I hope I pronounced that right, Orcane, Commander Video, and so on and so forth. There's been 6 characters confirmed thus far, and we know there will be 3 more in the base game and 1 more as DLC. That's what we know so far. There are also assist characters. Assist characters are basically characters that you call in mid-match. They do a quick move, and then they're out. They're out of there. So we have, I believe, 21 assist characters confirmed thus far, but there will be 50 in the base game. So that means there are 29 assist characters that we are unaware of, that we do not know the identity of. So basically, Framemakers, you don't have to love indie characters or even know who any of these characters are to enjoy the game, simply because this game feels like a love letter not just to indies, but to Smash as a whole. It looks really ambitious, the gameplay looks fluid, and it looks like it'll be a blast to play both competitively and casually. When it releases, it'll be available on PC, but shortly afterwards it will also be coming to the Nintendo Switch, which personally is the version that I am more so looking forward to, simply because I'm always on the go and I get a lot more usage out of my Switch. So now I'd like to talk about which characters I want to see in the game. And I did back the Framemakers project, so I did share some of these ideas with the team in the Framemakers backer survey. So now I'm going to share with you some of the things that I shared with them in that survey. Before I get into the characters I picked and why I picked them, I just briefly wanted to touch on something I noticed when I looked at other people's dream rosters for Framemakers, and this being that I noticed a lot of people picked bigger names when it came to their picks for playable characters. And I understand that people want to expose general audiences to what Framemakers is and indies as a whole, and getting characters like Sans from Undertale or the Imposter from Among Us would be perfect for that, because average Joe who doesn't play that many video games would look at Framemakers and go, oh wow, Sans from Undertale is playable in this game. Oh, I should buy that. Oh hey, who are these other guys? Commander Video, Weltero. I don't know who these guys are, but I'll go check out their games now. And like, I get it, that's a good promotional strategy. I just think that that's not the best idea, simply because I feel like that would overshadow and undervalue the rest of the roster in comparison. Because when you have like Sans throwing out Gaster Blasters and fighting with stuff like that, it really makes Commander Video and Weltero and Fishbungeon just seem that much less great in comparison. I don't want that to be a thing. I want these characters to shine in their own right, and I feel like Framemakers is probably the best environment for that to happen, if that makes sense. So, moving forward, the backer survey asked for me to pick 5 characters that I'd like to see as playable in the game. Now, for my most wanted playable character, I decided to go with a traditional fighting game character. And I think that the reason why we need a traditional fighting game character is because we have 2 characters from platform fighters, that being Orcane and Fishbungeon, but we do not have any traditional fighting game characters yet. And then I thought, what better indie game to rep traditional fighters than Skullgirls. And this flowed perfectly for me because I'm actually a big fan of Skullgirls. And so I thought to myself, now, who would the best Skullgirls rep be? And, you know, I thought about it for a long time. And who did I come up with as my answer? My number one character that I picked was, in fact, Big Band. And I know you're probably thinking right now, Big Band, Triple S, how could you mess it up that badly, man? Like, the game is called Skullgirls, and you really went with one of the two male characters. Now, just hear me out on this one. So, Big Band is a fan favorite character within Skullgirls, and I feel like he would be the perfect character to rep the game. He has an extremely unique moveset, and he attacks using instruments. His gimmick is that he can just start playing songs in the middle of a match, or before using his highest level blockbuster attack, the Satchmo Death Blow. And I feel like when you look at the characters in Framemakers and how they attack, I just envision Big Band fighting, and it just works so well to me. He seems like he'd be the perfect character from a transition standpoint. He would just work so well in Fraymakers. He can utilize Take the A-Train, Beat Extend, and Symbol Clash. He just has so many cool moves that would look amazing in Framemakers. Now, to be fair, do I think Big Band is actually going to get in as the Skullgirls rep? No, I think they're probably going to go with a female character for obvious reasons. As it's Skullgirls, picking a female character would make more sense. However, I picked Big Band because I like him the best. I think he would transition the best to Framemakers. I think seeing Big Band in a platform fighter is just one of the coolest things that could happen, period. But I do understand people wanting more female reps, and I did account for that later in my picks. So that's just getting that out there. Now, any Skullgirls reps that I see happening, I think the Skullgirls rep will probably be Philia, if it's going to be anyone, simply because she's the face of the game. I think Philia is probably one of the characters from Skullgirls that I want to see the least. I think another character like that would be Parasol. Those two just do not interest me that much. I would be totally fine with Valentine, Peacock, even Cerebella. Cerebella's probably mid for me. Yeah, I think Double would actually be a really big brain choice as the Skullgirls rep, simply because she reps basically like every base Skullgirls moveset in her moveset, because she copies other fighters' attacks, but that might be pushing it. Moving on to my second most wanted fully playable character, we have what is likely my most controversial pick, that being the GOAT from Goat Simulator. Now you might ask yourself, why is the GOAT such a controversial pick? Well, he's technically not an indie character anymore. I can understand why, in a game that's meant to be an indie Hall of Fame, some people might take issue with the fact that a non-indie character is playable. However, let me argue my case for a bit. So, one of the assists in Framemakers, in fact, one of the first assists ever shown off, is the Tankman from Newgrounds. The reason he was included was because Newgrounds is a website that inspired many budding indie developers. However, the Tankman doesn't actually originate from the video game. He originates from that Newgrounds website. So already we have non-video game representation in Framemakers. Now, the GOAT does originate from a video game. He originates from Goat Simulator. So I think it's safe to say that as long as a character had a noticeable big impact on the indie industry, they are a potential candidate. They are in the running, so to speak. Granted, the GOAT from Goat Simulator did not have nearly as big of an impact on indies as the Tankman did. However, I think that since the Tankman didn't even originate from a video game, that there's a trade-off there, where the Goat Simulator GOAT is a potential candidate. I think that if non-video game characters can get in, former indies can also get in. And the Goat from Goat Simulator he is an indie icon. Even if he is no longer an indie, he definitely inspired a lot of... He kind of started this whole subgenre of like these wacky off-the-wall games. Like, you try and tell me that Untitled Goose Game would have been made without Goat Simulator, I would laugh in your face. Like, he inspired all those wacky off-the-wall sandbox games. Like, Untitled Goose Game isn't really sandbox, but he kind of just inspired his own separate thing. So anyway, but the reason I want Goat from Goat Simulator in is because he just has such a crazy moveset potential. He can transform into the Devil Goat, Goat Queen, Excaligoat. He can turn into like one of like dozens of different goats. He can stop time. He can do all kinds of stuff. And I would just love to see him in. We kind of already have something similar to the Goat from Goat Simulator. In Octodad, those two are often compared to each other, and I get that. But those two are different enough, I feel, that the Goat from Goat Simulator could get in. Now, of all the characters I have for fully playable, Goat Simulator Goat is the one I'm least confident in. Because, one, he's not an indie character. Two, he's similar in the role he fulfills to Octodad. He's a great character. I would love to see him in, but he's the one I'm the most shaky on, even if he is my second most wanted. So these last three fully playable characters, I have a lot less to say on than the first two, so let's just knock them out of the way right here. Alright, so we have Hat Kid. I love Hat in Time. I actually love Hat in Time more than Super Mario Odyssey, which is kind of funny considering one's a AAA game and the other one's indie. But I think Hat Kid has a lot of cool moveset potential. Her gimmick can revolve around her switching hats. Like, she can have the speedy hat on, she can have the time stop hat on, and then she can have those moves that she doesn't even need a specific hat to wear, like her laser beam attack. There's just a lot of cool stuff they can do with Hat Kid, and a Mafia Town stage would be really cool as well. So, the fourth playable character that I picked was Spectre Knight. Now, you might be asking, why would you pick Spectre Knight as the Shovel Knight rep? Should have picked Shovel Knight himself. That is fair, but I just think that Shovel Knight, the character, is kind of oversaturated when it comes to indies. Like, he's gotten in basically every indie game and its mother. He's even an assist trophy in Smash. I just want them to give a spotlight to the other Shovel Knight characters instead. And I personally would love to see Spectre Knight get his due, because he is my favorite of the four knights that have their own campaign. However, I can see them going for Plague Knight or King Knight instead. I honestly think they're going to pick one of those two over Shovel Knight himself, because I think they're aware that people are kind of starting to get sick of Shovel Knight. So yeah, I think Spectre Knight would be cool. He can run up walls, he can dash slash, and he has all kinds of stuff like the Spider Scythe, and he can summon sentries, and he would be really cool. I think he would fit the Fraymakers aesthetic really well too. Kind of similar to how the Watcher from Slay the Spire does in Framemakers. I think he could fit that aesthetic too, because basically the Watcher is proof of concept that we know they can go for that darker aesthetic in Framemakers, and it works. So I'd like to see them also try that with Spectre Knight. I think that would look really cool. And finally, my final playable character pick is Shantae. Shantae's gonna happen. I'm pretty sure she is, because she is such a huge indie icon. And I mean, Alpharad in his video about Framemakers said that he wanted Shantae, and you know that Gregory McLeod is gonna put some kind of Alpharad appreciation in the final roster, simply because when Alfred made his video about Fraymakers, like, the amount of money they got from that was just insane. We hit like 8+ stretch goals simply because of Alfred mentioning Framemakers. It was ridiculous. Yes, I think Shantae would be cool, and that's why I have her as the last fully playable character on this list. She can utilize her different genie transformations, or they could go the route of the pirate game that I'm blanking on right now. They could utilize the different risky boots, pieces of pirate relics. They can do all kinds of stuff with Shantae. She's just a character with a lot of personality, and she seems like she transitioned really well to Framemakers. And so yeah, those are the playable characters that I'd like to see the most. So now I'd like to talk about the assists that I'd like to see in Framemakers and why I want them. And we're going to start with my most wanted assist of all time, and my most wanted of anything in Framemakers, period, and that is Mr. J Shufflebottom. That's right, the character you are looking at right now on the left side of the screen. I love Oser, the insult simulator. It's a great game. You should get it. It's really fun with friends. It costs $2 to $3 depending on where you get it. It is just an absolute blast. And I'm sad that it isn't really represented in many indie crossovers. I would love to see it in Framemakers, and obviously I do not think Mr. J Shufflebottom has what it takes to be a fully playable character, but I would just be over the moon to see him get in as an assist. I feel like that would just be so perfect. Seeing him pop up on screen for a few seconds and do his thing, that would make me so happy. It would make me more happy seeing him be an assist than seeing any character I want get playable. Seeing Jay Shufflebottom get in as an assist will make me more happy than seeing Big Bang get in as a playable character. And that's saying a lot, because like I mentioned earlier, seeing Big Bang be playable is one of my most wanted things, period. So yeah, Mr. J Shufflebottom, basically how his assist would work is he shows up on screen, he delivers one of his randomized insults. It will be entirely nonsensical. He'll insult his opponent's cousin's car, or their taste in elderberries, or whatever he wants to talk about. And it will lower the opponent's defense because the insult will hurt their pride. I think that is the best possible way that a Mr. J Shufflebottom assist would work, and it would just make me so happy to see Mr. J Shufflebottom get in there in Framemakers. If he actually gets in, I would use him like every single game. He would be my go-to assist. Man, I don't even have words to say how cool it would be seeing him. Okay, but that's enough of my J Shufflebottom rant. Okay, moving on. Oh, it's just one rant from another. So next we have Monica, and yes, Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club. You know that we are just moving straight from one triple S character rant to another here. You know how much I love Doki Doki Literature Club if you've been with the channel any length of time. And yes, I think she's an indie character that deserves to get in. You know, she's in this really weird echelon of popularity. She's not quite as big as Sans, but she's a lot bigger than most other indie characters. She's bigger than most of the fully playable characters in Framemakers right now. I think that she'd be a really cool character. Basically, the way I see her assist working is that she would appear on screen, and like a little text box can show up to some neat little reference to Doki Doki, and she would inflict a glitch on the opponent that makes them flinch, like their frames temporarily stutter, and it like corrupts their character model for a few seconds. And so basically, when their character model stutters, they are open to attack for like half a second, and that will happen a few times while she's on screen, and then she'll go away. That's basically how I see her doing. She causes her opponents to quote-unquote glitch. I think that she'd be right home, and I think she actually has a decent chance considering Doki Doki is very popular, and The DLC is probably coming back in the near future. It's likely coming to consoles if that leak we saw is credible at all, and it probably is. So that's enough on that though. So this next one is one that I briefly mentioned earlier, that being Peacock from Skullgirls. Basically, an assist, getting in as an assist is better than getting nothing at all. I think much like how Big Band would be the optimal fully playable Skullgirls rep, Peacock would be the optimal assist Skullgirls rep. She can show up and use her the whole idea move to go into a black hole and then pop out with a boxing glove. I think that would just be great because Skullgirls is no stranger to having assists. I mean, that's a core mechanic of the game, is having a character show up for 2 seconds and do an attack and then just going away. So I think that would work really well. These last two kind of go against what I said earlier, but they don't. These last two are big names in the gaming industry. Freddy from Five Nights at Freddy's and the imposter from Among Us. Now I know what you're saying. You said, Triple S, you said you can't have any big characters be in there. They would overshadow all the lesser characters. Yes, but these are assists and they're not fully playable, so they won't overshadow anyone. I think these two would be great. Freddy can just jump scare the player and it leaves them vulnerable for a few seconds. The imposter can either like jump out of nowhere and cause the opponent to trip, then shoot them with his gun, or he can poke out that tongue thingy and stab the opponent. There's a lot of potential there. So yeah, those are the assists that I want to see in the game. Yeah, and one more thing that I mentioned in my backer survey is I want to see them really go to town with the concept of match modifiers, because that was a stretch goal they hit, that there will be match modifiers now, similar to Shovel Knight Showdown. How there's just a lot of different wacky things that can happen during gameplay that you can turn on and off, kind of like Special Smash in Smash Brothers. And I just said I wanted them to go to town on that idea, because Shovel Knight Showdown isn't really that remarkable of a game, but what really made that game for me was the match modifiers. That's what kept me coming back for as long as I did. And I just love to see that in a game like Framemakers, because if match modifiers can keep me replaying an unextraordinary game like Shovel Knight Showdown, just think of how much more exciting it would make a good game, or at least it looks good from what we've seen so far, of Framemakers, then that would just be even crazier. That would be great. I want to see crazy things happen, and I think match modifiers are perfect for that. I just want to see them take that idea to 11, to 12, to as high as they can push the match modifiers idea. So yeah, that's basically everything I have to say on Framemakers for the moment. I might have more to say later if a specific character or assist gets revealed that I find really interesting and noteworthy. So yeah, thank you for watching the video. Insert obligatory like and subscribe shill here, and I will see you guys later.